how to get peace. That is the natural state. The mind obstructs the innate peace. Our vichara is only in the mind. Investigate the mind. It will disappear. It is eliminated, and you remain. So the question is one of outlook. You perceive all, see yourself, and all are understood. But you have now lost hold of yourself and go about doubting other things. If I am always here and now, why do I not feel so? That is it. Who says that it is not felt? Does the real I say it, or the false I? Examine it. You will find it is the wrong I. The wrong I is the obstruction. It has to be removed in order that the true I might not be hidden. The feeling that I have not realized is the obstruction to realization. In fact, it is already realized. There is nothing realizable. If the latter, the realization will be anew. It has not existed so far. It must take place hereafter. What has birth will also die. If realization be not eternal, it is not worth having. Therefore, what we seek is not that which must happen afresh. It is only that which is eternal and which is not known, due to obstructions. It is that we seek. All that we need to do is to remove the obstruction. That which is eternal is not known to be so because of ignorance. Ignorance is the obstruction. Get over that ignorance and all will be well. The ignorance is identical with the I thought. Find its source and it will vanish. The I thought is like a spirit which is not palpable, rises up simultaneously with the body, flourishes on it, and disappears with it. The body consciousness is the wrong I. Give up this body consciousness. It is done by seeking the source of the I. The body does not say I am. It is you who says, I am the body. Find out who this I is. Seek its source. It will vanish. Ego in its purity from objective identification is experienced in intervals between two states or two thoughts. Ego is like that caterpillar which leaves one hold only after catching another. Realize this interval with conviction gained by the study of the three states of consciousness. This study helps to gain this outlook. Should one keep a goal before one's eyes? What goal is there? The thing you conceive as being the goal exists even prior to the ego's own existence. If we conceive ourselves as ego or body or mind, then we are those things. But if we do not conceive ourselves as such, then we are our real nature. It is the thinking which gives rise to such troubles. The very thought that there is such a thing as ego is wrong, because ego is I thought, and we are ourselves, the real I. The thoughtless state is itself realization. The Veda declaration, I am this or that, is only an aid. If there be a goal to be reached, it cannot be permanent. What is goal is already there. With what ego do we seek to reach the goal? The goal is existent before the ego. What is in the goal is even prior to our birth, to the birth of the ego. Because we exist, the ego appears to exist too. If we look on the self as the ego, then we are the ego. If as the mind, we are the mind. If as the body, we are the body. It is the thought that works up appearance in so many ways. Looking at the shadow on the water, it is found to be shaking. Can anyone stop the shaking of the shadow? If it should cease to shake, you should not look on the water. Look at yourself. Therefore, do not look to the ego. The ego is the I thought. The true I is the self. How can we get in touch with the higher self? Is it something far away that you have to touch it? The higher self exists as one, but it is only our thoughts which make us feel it is not. You can neither think about it nor forget it. The higher self is always so, whether you follow the path to it or not. Divine existence is our very nature. How can we get rid of these false thoughts? You have unnecessarily loaded yourself with so many thoughts. That is the trouble. Just exist as you really are, and those thoughts will die away of themselves. To whom do those thoughts and emotions arise? As you have the habit of forming extraneous thoughts, it is difficult to change the habit. Can I go on thinking I am God? Is that right practice? Why think that? In fact, you are God. But who goes on saying, I am a man, I am a male? If any contrary thought, for instance, that one was a beast had to be put down, then of course you might say, I am a man. To the extent of crushing down the wrong notion, that one is this or that according to one's erroneous fancies, to that extent the idea that is not these but God or self may be indulged in as a matter of practice. But when practice is over, the result is not any thought at all, such as I am God, but mere self-realization. There is no need or meaning in thought at that stage, which is beyond conceptual thought. If self be itself conscious, why am I not aware even now? Your present knowledge is due to ego and is only relative. Relative knowledge requires a subject and object, whereas the awareness of self is absolute and requires no object. Remembrance, similarly, is relative. It requires an object to be remembered and another to remember. When there are no two things, who is to remember whom? That which is beyond knowledge and ignorance is the Atman. Up to what point is the inquiry itself to be carried out? You must carry on this demolition of wrong ideas by inquiry till your last wrong notion is demolished, till the self is realized. How is the mind to dive into the heart? The mind now sees itself diversified into the universe. If the diversity is not manifest, it remains in its own essence. That is the heart. The heart is the only truth. Mind is only a transient phase. Because a man identifies himself with the body, he sees the world separate from himself. This wrong identification arises because he has lost his moorings and has swerved from his original state. He is now advised to give up all these false ideas, to trace his source and remain as the self. In that state there are no differences, no questions will arise. All the Shastras are meant only to make man retrace his steps to the original source. He need not gain anything. He must only give up the false ideas and useless accretions. He, instead of doing it, tries to catch hold of something strange and mysterious because he believes that his happiness lies elsewhere. That is the mistake. If one remains as the self, there is bliss. Probably he thinks that being quiet does not bring about the state of bliss. That is due to his ignorance. The only practice is to find out to whom these questions arise. What is it to be our sadhana? The sahaja of siddha. Sahaja is the original state, so that sadhana amounts to the removal of obstacles for the realization of this abiding truth. Practical philosophy. What is selfishness? The world is not external. Because you identify yourself wrongly with the body, you see the world. Its pain becomes apparent to you. But this is not real. Seek the reality and get rid of this unreal feeling. A disciple was once excited because someone in the town spoke deprecatingly of Sri Bhagavan. Maharshi said, I permit him to do so. Let him say even more. Let others follow suit. Only let them leave me alone. If anyone cares to believe all these scandalous words, I shall consider it a great service done to me, because if he persuades people to think I am a false Swami, they will no longer come to visit me, and then I shall be able to have a quiet life. I want to be left alone, therefore I welcome the libellous pamphlet. Patience, more patience. Tolerance, more tolerance. Satisfaction can be only when you reach the source. Otherwise, restlessness is there. While reading a book, while your eyes follow the lines, your heart should be in the one. My friend has ardor for social service work even at the sacrifice of his own interests. His selfless work is helpful. Its utility cannot be denied. See how he works and remain there, and how you sent him the extract from the conversations. There is a link between the two. The work had further purified the man's mind. He gained an insight into the wisdom of sages rather readily. Social work has a place in the scheme of spiritual uplift. The work is social and not selfish. God is kept in view along. The public good is identical with one's own good. Such activities of the body and mind purify the mind. Thus, good social work is a way to render the mind purer. But social work does not give us leisure for meditation. Of course, one's efforts cannot end with social work. The outlook is always on the highest truth. Everything will come right in time. How is mauna possible while engaged in worldly transactions? When women walk with water pots on their heads, they are able to talk with their companions, and all the while they are intent on the water above. Similarly, when a sage engages in activities, they do not disturb him, because his mind abides in Brahman. The difficulty is that man thinks he is a doer. It is a mistake. It is the higher power which does everything, and man is only a tool. If he accepts that position, he is free from troubles, otherwise he courts them. I watched a visitor who was a famous public speaker for the Arya Samaj, a vigorous debater and fighter, known for his intolerance and disputatiousness, enter the hall and begin to question the Maharshi. Scarcely waiting for an answer, he began to provide the answers himself. He laid down the law in a loud voice. For instance, he said, "I want to know the way to find truth." A minute later, he firmly said, "The service of humanity is the best way to find truth." The Maharshi replied, "You say so." The man began to argue with two others present in an obnoxious manner, and thereafter the Maharshi kept quiet and did not say a single word until the man left. After that, Maharshi said to us, "Silence is the greatest weapon wherewith to answer such persons. Do your work without anticipating fruits thereof. That is all that you should do." I asked Maharshi why his books are in poem and song. He said it is easier for people to learn and remember this form. In the West, it will only be those disgusted with material life who will turn to the path. Joy and pain are the attributes of the ahankara ego. When by atma vichara you realize that you are not that sheath, where is the pleasure or pain for you? Your real nature transcends all such feelings as pleasure and pain. So your benefit in atma vichara is tangible in the shape of escape from all the ills and sorrows of life. What more can one desire? He who is always stationed in the Atman may be in the midst of a crowd and will yet continue undisturbed. He has no need or desire for solitude. What people call Satan, the devil, the black forces, etc., is simply ignorance of the true self. All aims, aspirations, desire to serve humanity, schemes to reform the world, cast them all upon the universal power God, which sustains this universe. He is not a fool. He will do what is required. Do you lose the sense I am doing this? Get rid of the egoism. Do not think that you are the person to effect any reform. Leave these aims latent. Let God attend to them. Then by getting rid of egoism, God may use you as an instrument to effect them. But the difference is that you will not be conscious of doing them. The infinite will be working through you, and there will be no self-worship to spoil the work. Otherwise, there is desire for name or fame, and one serves the personal self rather than humanity. Nearly all mankind are more or less unhappy because nearly all do not know the true self. Real happiness abides in self-knowledge alone. All else is fleeting. To know oneself is to be blissful always. Is the world progressing now? There is one who governs the world, and it is his outlook to look after the world. He who has given life to the world knows how to look after it also. If we progress, the world progresses. As you are, so is the world. Without understanding the self, what is the use of understanding the world? Without self-knowledge, the knowledge of the world is of no use. See the world through the eyes of your Supreme Self. Is it harder for Westerners to withdraw inwards? Yes, they are rajasic. The energy goes outwards. We must be inwardly quiet, not forgetting the self. Then externally, we can go on with our action. Does a man who is acting on the stage in a female part forget that he is a man? Similarly, we too must play our parts in the stage of life, but we must not identify ourselves with those parts. You may carry on with your government work. You may continue to live the married life in the world as before. You may assume the stage which transcends all stages. Only do not forget the one. Keep your mind on that all the time, whatever you happen to be doing. What is the best way of living? It differs according to whether one is a jnani or not. A jnani does not find anything different or separate from the self. All are in the self. The universe and what is beyond are to be found in the self. How to remove spiritual sloth? Have you removed your own? Turn your inquiries towards self-search. A force set up within you will operate on others also. What about PB's idea of inspired action? Let activities go on. They do not affect the pure self. The difficulty is that man thinks he is the doer. It is a mistake. It is the higher power that does everything, and man is only a tool. If he accepts that position, he is free from troubles. Otherwise, he courts them. The sculptured figure on Temple Tower shows great strain, but the tower rests on earth and really supports the figure. So is the man who takes on himself the sense of doing. How is the work to be done by an aspirant? Without identification as the actor. For instance, while in Paris, did you not intend visiting this place? You see how you are acting without your own intention to do so? Chapter 3, verse 4 of the Bhagavad Gita says that a man cannot remain without acting. The purpose of one's birth will be fulfilled by itself. Gradually, concentration will become pleasant and easy, and you will be in that state whether attending to business or whether you sit expressly for meditation. Business will be all the more easier for you when your mind is steadied and strengthened by concentration. I have no interest in business, fearing my yoga practice will be marred. No, your viewpoint will change, as said in the Gita, Chapter 2. You will regard business in the light of a mere dream that will not affect it, for you will go on attending to it as it were serious. The difficulty is to be in the thoughtless state and attend to duties. Let the thoughtless state be of itself. Do not think of it as pertaining to yourself. Just as when you walk, you take steps involuntarily. Do so in your other actions. You now want to go elsewhere, and from there you will desire to go some other place. At this rate, there will be no end to your travels. You do not realize that it is your mind that drives you in this manner. Control that first, and you will be happy wherever you are. It is my impression that Swami Vivekananda has somewhere narrated the story of a man trying to bury his shadow and finding that over every sod of earth he had put in the grave dug for burying his shadow, the latter still appeared. Over the new earth, the shadow should never be buried. Similar is the case of one trying to bury his thoughts. One must therefore attempt to get at the very bottom from which thought springs, and root out thought, mind, and desires. The quest for self is selfish in a world of misery. Selfless work is better. The sea is not aware of its wave. Similarly, the self is not aware of its ego. While the Maharshi was going down the hill, some sweepers were at their work. One of them stopped work and was about to prostrate before Maharshi. The latter said, "To engage in your duty is the true namaskar. To perform one's duty carefully is the greatest service to God. There has been evil and sorrow since the beginning of creation. You ask why the rishis do not put matters right. The Vedas tell of the asuras, demons, who existed since earliest times. There is a force of opposition in the world, which produces strife and suffering, but it works to make man grow and evolve. It is a force in nature which coexists along with the good. How to correlate spiritual and worldly life? There is only one experience. What are worldly experiences but those built up on the false I? To one who said the Bhagavad Gita preached Kama Yoga, the Maharshi replied, "No, because it taught that one should act with selfless motive. This could only be achieved after knowing the illusoriness of self, jnana. Hence it really taught Jnana Yoga, which Maharshi said is the highest. He said that Gita taught man should act by letting the universal act through him. Why is the world in ignorance? Let the world care for itself. If you are the body, there is the gross world. If you are the spirit, all is spirit only. Look for it. The ego vanishes. If you inquire, the ignorance will be found non-existent. It is the mind which feels misery, darkness, etc. See the self. What is the purpose of all suffering and evil in the world? Your question is itself the outcome of the suffering. Sorrow makes a man think of God. Had it not been for the suffering, would you have put the question? Except for the Nilnis, every man from king to peasant has a certain amount of sorrow. Even in cases where it seems absent, it is only a time factor that makes you think so. Sooner or later it comes. Also, one man may not question sorrow or God at the first blow, but he is likely to do so at the fifth blow. We have taken this vehicle in order to know our real state. But why should imperfection come from perfection? Had it not been for the manifestation of universe, we would not have thought about the real state. The purpose of manifestation is for you to know the cause why it is being done. There is no Maya when you know your real state. It is your fault if you do not know yourself. What is the difference between West and East? All have come to the same goal. I am a doctor. How to heal? The permanent cure is jnana. The patient must realize for himself. According to his maturity, he will realize it. Otherwise, if one disease goes, another comes in. To a young man who came and demanded to be given powers to stamp out the world's materialism was said, people who are unable themselves ask for divine powers to be utilized for human welfare. This is like the lame man who said he would overpower the enemy, if only he were helped on his feet. The intention is good, but there is no sense of proportion. Is the world plan really good? It is indeed good. The error is on our part. When we correct that error, the whole scheme becomes good. How to change the world's suffering? Realize the self. That is all that is necessary. The world is materialistic. What is the remedy for it? Material or spiritual, according to your outlook. Make your outlook right. The Creator knows how to take care of His creation. How can I help others? What other is there for you to help? Who is the I that is to help others? First, clear that point, and then everything settles itself. There is widespread disasters in the world, famine, pestilence, etc. What is the cause of these state of affairs? To whom does all this appear? You are not aware of the world and its suffering in your sleep. You are conscious of them only in your wakeful state. Continue in the state in which you were not aware of the world and its sufferings did not affect you. When you remain as the self, as in sleep, the world and its sufferings will not affect you. Therefore look within, seek the self. There will then be an end of the world and its miseries. There are great men, public workers, who cannot solve the problem of the misery of the world. They are ego-centered and hence the inability. If they remain in the self, they would be different. How to reconcile work with meditation. Who is the worker? Let him who works ask the question. You are always the self, not the mind. It is the mind which raises these questions. Work always proceeds in the presence of the self. It is no hindrance to realization. It is the mistaken identity of the worker that troubles one. Get rid of the false identity. Everyday activities go on automatically. Know that the mind prompting them is but a phantom proceeding from the self. Why do you think that you are active? The activities are not your own. They are God's. They say that the efforts will lead to blankness of mind and work will not be possible. Go first to that blankness and tell me afterwards. If one holds such self in remembrance, will one's actions be always right? They ought to be. However, such a person is not concerned with the right or wrong of actions. His actions are God's, and therefore right. How can my mind be still if I have to use it more than other people? I want to go into solitude and renounce my headmaster's work. No, you may remain where you are and go on with work. What is the undercurrent which vivifies the mind, enables it to do all this work? Why, the self. So that is the real source of your activity. Simply become aware of it during your work and do not forget it. Contemplate in the background of your mind even whilst working. To do that, do not hurry. Take your own time. Keep the remembrance or real nature alive even whilst working. And avoid haste, which causes you to forget. Be deliberate. Practice meditation to still the mind and cause it to become aware of its true relationship to the self, which supports it. Do not imagine it is you who are doing the work. Think that it is the underlying current which is doing it. Identify yourself with this current. If you work unhurriedly, recollectedly, your work or service need not be a hindrance. Krishna in the Gita really told Arjuna to be fixed in the self and act according to nature, without the thought of doership. Then the results of actions would not affect him. Thus, inherence in the self is the sum of Gita's teaching. Even if interpreted as a duty in action, it means to act as tool of a higher power. Is it useful to bring East and West closer? Such events will take place automatically. There is a power guiding the destinies of nations. These questions arise only when you have lost touch with reality. How to reconcile realization with wage-earning activities? Actions are no cause of bondage. Bondage is only the false notion that I am acting. Leave off such thoughts, but let the body and senses play their roles unimpeded by your interference. Is work an obstruction? No. For the realized man, there is no sense of being an agent. Even for an aspirant, he may practice self-inquiry. While engaged in work, it may be difficult for a beginner, but after some practice, it will be effective, and the work will not be a hindrance to meditation. How will transactions go on if one maintains mental silence? When women walk with water pots on their heads and keep chatting with their companions, they are very careful of the loads on their heads. Similarly, when a jnani engages in activities, they do not defile him because his mind abides in Brahman. We are men living in the world and have one kind of grief or another. We pray for help and still are not satisfied. What to do? Trust God. If you surrender, you must be able to abide by His will and not make grievance of what may not please you. Things may turn out different from what they are in appearance. Distress often leads men to faith in God. I am a sinful man. Why, think of yourself so. You have rightly thrown all responsibilities on God in whom you have faith, and He will look after that. Have compassionate love for others, but keep it secret. Don't show it or talk of it. If desires are fulfilled, don't be elated. If frustrated, don't be disappointed. The elation may be deceptive. It should be checked, for initial joy may end in final grief. After all, whatever happens, you are unaffected, still as you were. But how can I help another with his problem, his troubles? What is the talk of another? There is only one. Try to realize there is no I, no you, no he, only the one self which is all. If you believe in the problem of another, you are believing in something outside the self. You will help him best by realizing the oneness of everything rather than by outward activity. The ego pertains to the all-waking activities, the consciousness, the intellect. In deep sleep, where is the I? The intellect is still, the body is still, and yet the self is there. It is the waking activities that veil the real self by making ego. The false self appears as the real self. Everything in this universe is run by one supreme power. But if a man will not keep to the destined path appointed for him, but strays beyond its limits, then God punishes him, and through that suffering he turns toward the self. But when the punishment goes, he ceases to worship and again sins, therefore inviting an increased punishment. When he gets excited or anxious, he may know that he is not on the destined path, but is straying. For on the appointed path he will be peaceful and content. He should abide in the self, and not seek to stray into desires, ambitions, etc., beyond what God gives him, but be egoless. Whose free will is it? You believe it is yours. You are beyond will and fate. Abide as that, and you transcend them both. That is the meaning of conquering destiny by will. Fate can be conquered. Fate is the result of karma. But by satsanga, the bad vasanas are conquered. His experiences are viewed in proper perspective. I am now enjoyer of karma's fruits. I was in the past and shall be in the future. Who is this I? Finding this I to be pure consciousness beyond karma and enjoyment, freedom and happiness are gained. There is then no effort, for the self is perfect, and there is nothing to gain. So long as there is individuality, one is enjoyer and doer. But if it is lost, the divine will act and guide the course of events. Restrictions and discipline are for jivas and not for muktas. Free will is implied in the scriptural injunctions to be good. It implies overcoming fate. It is done by jnana. As the fire which is kindled reduces all fuel to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge reduce all works to ashes. When anything happens, we are prone to attribute the same to something or someone else. However, the fact is that our experiences have already been created by ourselves, and nothing happens which is more or less than what we deserve. What can others do to us? Others are not responsible for what happens to us. They are only instruments for what would happen to us some way or other. Let us be strong in faith and not succumb to fear. Whatever happens, happens according to our prarabdha. Let it exhaust itself. Evil intentions and evil actions will react themselves and not affect us simply because they desire it. One is required not to think of oneself. So why there be anxiety regarding others? If a soul dies in babyhood or childhood, it does not seem fair because it has not had enough experience of life to win realization. You do not know the child's viewpoint. Yours is simply of the intellect. We and our children are all from God and in God. God takes care of us and our children. Animals can think like human beings. We must not imagine they are senseless creatures. Some who have associated in contact with people can understand words and conversations. Maharshi pointed to a cow and said she could think intelligently. Individual human beings have to suffer their karmas, but Ishvara manages to make the best of their karmas for his purpose. God manipulates the fruits of karma. He does not add or take away from it. The subconscious of man is a warehouse of good and bad karma. Ishvara chooses from this warehouse what he sees will best suit the spiritual evolution at the time of each man, whether pleasant or painful. Thus there is nothing arbitrary. The realized man knows neither past, present, or future. He is above time, for he lives in the timeless self. What is it that is born? Not the true self. Once we are born into that, it is final. That is the true and only birth, the spiritual birth. The others are but fleeting incarnations of the vasanas. If it were not for the body, we would not talk of the spirit being within us. We would be the true self. The illumined man will just watch and wait and see what happens. He lets things take their course. He resigns all to that absolute power, which you can call God, karma, or what you like. There is no egoism in him, so be quiet. There is a sloka in Gita which says that he who acts without attachment to the senses and without egoism, the sense I am doing this, though he kills an enemy, does not make any karma. Similarly, such an illuminated one is free from all past karma and free from all past vasanas. How can there be karma or vasanas when the I, the ego, which caused or causes them, has been destroyed? The illuminated man does not plan for the future and takes not forethought. Why should he? There is no sense of I in him any longer. The infinite power which is able to do things directs him. I want to go to Mount Kailas. One can see these places only if destined, not otherwise. But after seeing all, there will still remain more places unvisited. If not in this hemisphere, then in the other. Knowledge implies ignorance beyond what is known. Knowledge is always limited. Surrender and all will be well. Throw all the responsibility on God. Do not bear the burden. What can destiny do? If one surrenders to God, there will be no cause for anxiety. Nothing will affect you, if protected by God. The sense of relief depends upon and is proportionate to reliance on God or on self. My work hinders me. If you have the right attitude, the kind of life you lead does not matter very much. In this pure atmosphere, the path is easy, but in towns it is difficult. When you see the true self, is it not a pure atmosphere? Let the body think what it wishes. But why should you think so? Only if you can keep quiet without engaging in any other pursuits also. It is very good. If that cannot be done, what is the use of being quiet? So long as one is obliged to be active, let him not give up attempts to realize the self. Even if a realized man were to destroy many lives, no sin can touch that pure soul. So too says the Gita. You are yourself the source of all your happiness, whatsoever it be, and not external things. Even when you imagine that some external object has given you the happiness, you are mistaken. What happened really is that unconsciously the object brought you back for a flash to yourself. Borrowed the happiness and thus presented it to you. The happiness came as a shadow to you. Why not look to the source, to the self, and realize it? I am possessed by fears of disease and death. Who gets disease? Do you get it? If you analyze what you are, you see that disease cannot affect you. What are you? Do you die? Can you die? Think of Atma. Realize that. I try, but it does not remain in the mind long. Practice makes perfect. Meanwhile, there need not be suffering. Would the use of birth control appliances lead to immortality? You must go to the root of things. Find out the true cause of birth and then stifle that. Let that which is born control itself. To whom is this born? There is an ancient verse which says, desires go on increasing and burning more fiercely as they are fed. So the only effective control is to check the causes within, to check desires, and thus become moral. how to control lust, anger, etc. Whose are these passions? Find out if you remain as the self. There will be found nothing apart from the self. Then there will be no need to control, etc. If a man's happiness is due to outer causes and external possessions, then a man devoid of possessions should have no happiness whatever. Does real experience show this? No. For in deep sleep, man is then devoid of all possessions, including his body. Yet instead of being happy, he enjoys blissful release. Does not everyone desire to sleep soundly? Hence, happiness is not due to external causes, but to returning into the self. When the pure I, the reality, is forgotten, all miseries crop up. When that is held fast, the miseries do not affect the person. Emergence from self has been the cause of all misery. A snake in ashram hall fell down from the roof at night, and when sleeping, Maharshi ordered the men to take a lantern to light its path to the door and not to harm it, saying regarding the snakes which infested the place, "We have come to their abode as guests, and so we have no business to molest them. Let us leave them in peace." What is your opinion about social reform? Self-reform automatically brings about social reform. Confine yourself to self-reform. Social reform will take care of itself. Is a teacher needed? As in all physical and mental training, a competent teacher is sought. So in matters spiritual, the same rules apply. Sagehood as an ideal. The realized man finds himself in others. They are not different from himself. With wise men, he is wise. With the ignorant men, he becomes ignorant. With children, he will play. And with the learned, he will be scholarly. The meditation on the Guru's face or form is only for beginners. The advanced disciple should concentrate inwards on the self. This is equal to meditating on the Guru, for he is one with the self. The self-realized one is not to be regarded as an idler or lazy drone. His power develops incessantly and in course of time. He may develop manifest occult powers if that is his karma. This will be merely a sort of sport for the jnani in the objective world, as he has no interest or particular purpose to serve. But if his prarabdha is otherwise, the siddhis do not manifest, and the wise man who habitually and by nature rests in the Atman does not seek any other path. When one has realized, a universal life current takes possession of him and uses him henceforth. His own separate will is gone. He becomes but an instrument in its hands. This is the real self-surrender. This is the highest kundalini, this real bhakti. This is jnana. A realized one sends out waves of spiritual influence in his aura which draw many people towards him. Yet he may sit in a cave and maintain complete silence. We may listen to lectures upon truth and come away with hardly any grasp of the subject, but to come into contact with a realized one, though he speaks nothing, will give much more grasp of the subject. He does not ever need to go out among the public. If necessary, he can use others as instruments. Is a guru needed for spiritual progress? Yes, but the guru is within you. He is one with your own self. All lectures and books do little good and are of use only for beginners, to point out the way. The real service is done in meditation. One sitting still and silent, as mentioned in the poem by the Tamil saint Tayumanavar, can influence a whole country. The force of meditation is infinitely more powerful than speech or writings. One who sits in silence, meditating on the self, will draw a whole lot of people to him without his going out to anyone. Even books like the Bhagavad Gita, Light on the Path, must be given up to find the self by looking within. Even the Gita says, meditate upon the self. It does not say, meditate upon the book, the Gita. Prajnanda has written me to ask if he can become your disciple. All these gurus and disciples exist only from the disciple's standpoint. To the self-realized, there is neither guru nor disciple, only oneself. The guru is the disciple. Only because you have the body consciousness do you regard him as separate. But a guru can give help. Certainly, yes, he can help. Well, shall I say faith and love towards you are all he needs to show? By repeated practice, one can become accustomed to turning inward and finding the self. One must make incessant effort always until one has permanently realized. After that, all effort ceases. The state becomes natural. The Supreme takes possession of the man with unbroken current. Until it has become permanently natural, your habitual state, know that you have not realized the self, only glimpsed it. The soul that realizes the self may not be connected with a working body, senses, and mind without, however, identifying itself with that body. Is there something to be transferred at initiation? Transfer means eradication of the sense of being the disciple. The master does it. Not that the man was something at one time and later metamorphosed into another. If the individual is sought, he is nowhere to be found. Such is the guru. Such is Dakshinamurti. What did he do? He was silent. The disciples appeared before him. He maintained silence. The doubts of the disciples were dispelled, which means that they lost their individual identities. Such is the guru and such is true initiation. That is jnana, and not the verbiage usually associated with it. Silence is the most potent form of work. However vast and emphatic the Shastras may be, they fail in their effect. The guru is quiet, and peace prevails in all his silence, and is more vast and emphatic than all the Shastras put together. These questions arise because of the feeling that having been here so long, heard so much, exerted so hard, I have not gained anything. The work proceeding within is not apparent. In fact, the guru is with one always. Tayu Manavar says, O Lord, coming with me all along these births, never abandoning me and finally rescuing me. Such is the experience of realization. The Srimad Bhagavad Gita says the same thing in a different way. We too are not only now, but have ever been so. Is not grace the gift of the guru? God, grace, and guru are all synonymous and also eternal and immanent. Is not the self already within? Is it for the guru to bestow it by his look? If the guru thinks so, he does not deserve the name. The books say that there are so many initiations such as Hasta Diksha, initiation by hand, Sparsa Diksha, initiation by touch, mental Dikshas, etc. They say that the guru makes some rites with fire, water, japa, mantras, etc. and call such fantastic performances initiations as if the sisha becomes ripe only after such processes. Guru's grace is worth more than study and meditation. It is primary. All others are secondary. The Guru's grace is like a hand extended to help you out of water. Is divine grace really necessary? Can a man's honest efforts bring him to the goal? Yes, it is so. But the gift of such grace is vouchsafed only to him who is a true devotee, or to a yogin who has striven hard and ceaselessly on the path. The Guru's grace is the same as God's grace, because Guru is not different from him. I pray for your grace because human efforts are unavailing without grace. Both are necessary. There is the sun shining, but you must turn and look at it in order to get a glimpse of the sun. Similarly, individual efforts are necessary as well as grace. Grace is within you. If it is external, it is useless. Grace is the self. You are never out of its operation. If you remember the Guru, you are prompted to do so by the self. Is not grace already there? Is there a moment when grace is not operating in you? Your remembrance of the Guru is the forerunner of grace. The latter is both the response and stimulus. That is the self, and that is grace. There is no cause for anxiety. But is not a guru's grace or God's grace necessary for one's progress and the vichara? Yes, but the inquiry that you are making is itself guru's grace or God's grace. What is the path? The method may be anything. From whatever directions the pilgrims foregather, they may enter the Kaaba only by one passage. People speak of different methods. Which method is easiest? The methods appear easy according to the nature of the individual. It depends upon what he has practiced before. How long is a guru necessary? As long as there is ignorance. The guru, otherwise God, is manifesting, guides the devotee saying that God is in you and he is the self. This leads to introversion of mind and finally to realization. Effort is necessary until the state of realization. Even then the self should spontaneously become evident. Still, that state of spontaneity, effort in some form is required. How to meet appointed guru? Intense meditation brings about the consummation. The sage's glance has a purifying effect. If you understand your own reality, the rishis will be clear to you. There is only one master, and that is the self. Sanat Kumara, the one initiator, works through all the gurus in the world. There is thus no difference between them and him. He bestows his teaching and initiation, which is the highest, in the silence. Does the guru give help deliberately? Guru's grace works automatically, spontaneously. The disciple gets precisely the help he requires. You say that association with the wise and service of them is required of the disciple. Yes, the first really means association with the unmanifest Sat, or absolute existence. But as very few can do that, they have to take the second best, which is association with the manifest Sat, the Guru. Association with the sages should be made because the thoughts are so persistent. The sage has already overcome the mind and remains in peace. His proximity helps to bring about such condition in others. Otherwise, there is no meaning in seeking his company. The Guru provides the needed strength unseen by others. Service is primarily to abide in the self, but it also includes to make the Guru's body comfortable and to look after his place of abode. Also, contact with the Guru is necessary, but this means spiritual contact. If the disciple finds the Guru internally, then it does not matter where he goes. Staying here or elsewhere must be understood to be the same and to have the same effect. A jnani does not feel oppressed by his body. Are those jnanis who lived in bodies and wrote sacred books no longer jnanis? Guru is the self after all, but manifest as the external guru at a lower stage of the mind's development. A spiritually minded man takes God for his guru, believing that God is everywhere. Later, God brings in contact with a personal guru whose grace enables him to feel that his self is the reality and guru. Cannot a guru give us realization as a gift? Guru is a very powerful aid on the path, but your effort also is required. It is essential that it is you who should see the sun. Can spectacles see the sun for you? You have to see your true nature. Will not a competent guru be a great help to me? Yes, go on working with the light you have now available, and you will meet the guru, as he will be seeking you himself. Who wants physical immortality? We should want only one thing to realize and be in the self, and to get off of this body. Why then prolong life in it? His Highness Maharaja Mysore visited the Maharshi for 15 minutes, remaining silent almost the whole time. At lunch that day, when the devotees were talking about the incident, Maharshi remarked, "He is a highly advanced soul. He is a Janaka." What need is there for talk when a knower meets another knower? It suffices for their eyes to meet and glance, when immediately they turn inwards in response and recognition. Vocal conversation is not necessary. What is this talk of Guru's grace? Does the Guru hold you by the hand and whisper something in your ear? You imagine him to be what you are yourself, because you are with the body, and you think that he is also a body to do something tangible to you, but his work lies within. How is a Guru gained? If a devotee prays to God unselfishly, God, who is immanent in his grace, takes pity on the loving devotee and manifests himself as a being according to the devotee's standard. The devotee thinks that he is a man and expects relationship as between bodies, but the Guru, who is God or self-incarnate, works from within, helps the man to see the error of his ways, guides him in the right path until he realizes the self within. After such a realization, he feels, I was so worried before, I am after all the self, the same as before, but not affected by anything. Where is he who is miserable? He is not to be found. What should we do now? Only act up to the words of the Master. Work within. The Guru is both within and without. So he creates conditions to drive you inward and prepares the interior to drag you to the center. Thus he gives you a push from without and exerts a pull from within, so that you may be fixed at the center. In sleep you are centered within. Simultaneously with waking up, your mind rushes out, thinking this, that, and all else. This must be checked. It is possible only for the agent who can work both within and without. Can he be identified with the body? We think that the world can be conquered with our efforts. When frustrated externally and driven internally, we feel that there is a power higher than man. The existence of the higher power must be admitted and recognized. The ego is a very powerful elephant and cannot be brought under control by anyone less than a lion, who is no other than the Guru in this instance, whose very look makes the elephant tremble and die. We will know in due course that our glory lies where we cease to exist. In order to gain the state, one should surrender oneself, saying, Lord, thou art my refuge. The Master then sees this man is in the fit state to receive guidance and so guides him. The best instruction is heart-to-heart speech in silence. When after long struggles one attains is the attainment of his own act or action of the spirit current, it is the action of the spirit current. It is claimed that the grace of Ishvara is necessary. We are Ishvara. By seeing ourselves as him, we are having his grace. His nature is grace. Personal example and personal instruction are the most helpful aids on the path, while practice is better than books. Does Bhagavan make the way easy for aspirants by himself becoming a kind of vicarious tapas, so that they need not go through actual hardships? If that were so, everyone will easily reach the goal. Each one must work for himself. A higher power is leading you. Be led by the same. It knows what to do and how to do it. Trust to it. Have I your grace and benediction? Why should you doubt it? Jnana is required by satsanga, or rather its atmosphere. Leave it to him. Surrender unreservedly, either because you admit your inability and require a higher power to help you, or investigate. Go into the source and merge in self. God never forsakes one who has surrendered. Is grace necessary? Certainly, but grace is all along there. It is the self, and is not to be acquired. Swami Siddhas Nadawanda of the Ramakrishna Mission told me, one morning at 7 a.m., when I was sitting in the hall, I asked Maharshi about a certain verse of the Namalwar embodying his cosmic consciousness vision. The Maharshi replied, I shall repeat some similar verses by another poet of the Tamil language. Attend to my way of repeating the words and you will be able to understand. Although you are a Malayali from the west coast, the verse has reference to divine love. A shaft of sunlight fell through the window onto his face. Hardly had he read out 2 lines when I noticed beads of tears trickling down his face. Then he stopped repeating the words as though he felt too keenly and emotionally the meaning of the words. There was an atmosphere of love around him. For 2 or 3 hours he remained silent, the rest of the poem unread, the book upon his knee, his eyes open, in a trance of divine emotion. The Swami had formerly held the impression that the Maharshi was dry, cold, indifferent type. This experience showed how deeply the Maharshi can feel. One who sees the self has the power to help others to see themselves. He is the real guru, and that is the only initiation. Can the guru make disciple realize self by transmitting his own power to him? Yes, guru does not bring about realization. He merely removes the obstacles to it, for the self is always realized. When Maharshi is engaged in giving tartaka, eye-to-eye darshan, to a devotee, sometimes he actually becomes cross-eyed, with this curious difference that the right eye remains looking steadily ahead, whilst the left eye gazes at an oblique angle, and the effect is rather weird and mysterious. First, he lifts his gaze to the ceiling, and then slowly drops it to a level before conveying tartaka. The cosmic mind manifesting in some rare being is able to affect the linkage in others of the individual weak mind with the universal strong mind of the inner recesses. Such a rare being is called the Guru, or God, in manifestation. Is a man to engage in teaching his knowledge, however imperfect, if his prarabdha karma be that way? The jnani says, I am the body. The ajnani says, I am the body. What is the difference? I am is the truth. The body is the limitation. The ajnani limits the I with the body. I in sleep is apart from the body. The same I now too in the waking state. Though I thought to be within the body, I is without the body. The wrong notion is not I am the body. I says so. The body is insentient and cannot say so. The mistake lies in thinking that I is what I is not. I cannot be inert body. The body's movements are confounded with I's movements, and misery is the result. Whether the body works or not, I remains free and happy. The ajnani's I is identified with the body only. There is the whole air. The jnani's I includes the body and what is all. Some intermediate entity arises and gives rise to confusion. Is not grace more effective than abhyasa, constant practice? The Guru simply helps you in the eradication of ignorance. I am unable to make as many visits to you as I want. You need not come, you need not feel disheartened about it. Wherever you are, do not stray from yourself. Do you have thoughts? I usually have no thoughts, but when you are reading, then I have thoughts. And when someone asks you a question, then too I have thoughts when replying, not otherwise. Krishna's statement that he is reborn from time to time whenever world needs is a sop to ignorance which mistakes him for the body. He is reality, hence unborn. Once after I prostrated, the Maharshi said, Why do this? It is only a formality. It is not necessary. I must answer any and every question. Unless I do so, I am not great. I am not endowed with television. God has not bestowed that gift on me. What shall I do? How can I answer all questions? People call me Maharshi and treat me like this, but I do not see myself as a Maharshi. In the Christian Trinity, the Son of God is the Guru, or God manifest, who explains to a devotee that the Holy Spirit is immanent everywhere. How can I keep the idea of that real state always before me? Because you are not able to keep that single idea, because you are not firm, because you think you are a body. The idea that you must go to Tiruvannamalai and see Maharshi is only a function of the intellect. No help is required. You are already in your original state. How can anyone help you to arrive where you already are? The help given is really to clear out your wrong notions. The great men, the gurus, can help only by removing the obstacles in your way. A child and jnani are in some ways similar. The child ceases to think of incidents after they have passed off. Thus it shows that they do not leave deep impressions on the child's mind. So too with the jnani. Are saints who live in remote forests and Tibetan mountains still helpful to the world? Quite. Realization of self is the greatest help that can be rendered to humanity, no matter where the saint live. Is it not necessary for the saints to mix with people in order to help them? A realized being does not see world as different from himself. The help given by him is imperceptible, but it is still there. A saint helps the whole of humanity unknown to it. The silence of a sage gives permanent benefit and instruction to humanity, whereas lectures entertain individuals for a few hours without improving them. Silence is eloquence unceasing. Dakshinamurti is the ideal. He taught his rishi disciples by silence. But would it not be more effective if he mixed with them? There are no others to mix with. The self is the only reality. But nowadays disciples must be created, sought after. That is a sign of ignorance. The power which created you created the world and can take care of both also. Do I need a guide to see God? Who was your guide to see Ramana Bhagavan? With whose guidance do you see the world daily? Just as you are able to see the world yourself, so also you will be able to see yourself, if you earnestly strive to do so, yourself alone being your guide in that quest also. Is the guru absolutely necessary? Take guru to be real self, and yourself to be the individual self. So long as duality persists in you, the guru is necessary. Because you identify yourself with body, you think guru to be somebody, but you are not the body nor the guru. This knowledge that you are self, and so is the guru, is gained by what you call realization. How can one know a competent guru? By peace of mind in his presence and by the sense of respect you feel for him. What is the use of people like you who sit still doing nothing when the world is in great trouble? A self-realized being cannot help benefiting the world. His very existence bestows the highest good to the world. You imagine the guru to be what you are yourself. Because you are with the body, you imagine him to do something tangible to you. His work lies within. The devotee thinks the guru is a man and expects a relationship as between bodies. But the guru, who is self-incarnate, works from within. The guru creates conditions to drive you inward and prepares the interior to drag you to the center. Thus he gives a push and exerts a pull from within, so that you may be fixed at the center. In sleep you are centered within, but on waking your mind rushes out thinking this and that. This must be checked. Swami Vivekananda speaks of the guru transferring spirituality. Is there a substance to be transferred? Transfer really means the eradication of the sense of being the disciple. Must the guru have a human body? Because you identify yourself with your body, you raise the question. Find out if you are the body. The Gita says that those who cannot understand the transcendental nature of Sri Krishna are fools, deluded by ignorance. The Master appears in order to dispel that ignorance. As Tayumanavar puts it, he appears to dispel the ignorance of a man, just as a deer is used as a decoy to capture the lion in the jungle. He has to appear with a body in order to eradicate our ignorance, the I am the body idea. What is all this talk of masters, etc., guiding the destinies of the world? Had it not been said, would these people have diverted their outgoing minds from the world and turned inward to meditate? That is the purpose of the mention of masters and their hierarchy by the Theosophists. By a rishi sitting in one place, all things can be done by him if he wills. He can bring on wars or end them. But he knows there is a cosmic and karmic process going on, so he won't interfere unwisely. What does the guru do? Does he hand over realization to disciple? Is not the self always realized? By remaining in contact with realized sages, the man gradually loses the ignorance until its removal is complete. The eternal self is thus revealed. Realization is eternal and is not newly brought about by the guru. He merely helps in the removal of ignorance. The disciple surrenders himself to the master. That means that there is no vestige in individuality retained by the disciple, and thus no cause of misery. Without understanding it aright, people think the guru teaches the disciple tattvam asi, thou art that, as something to make him more powerful than anything else. The man is already vain. What will be the case if the very same I grows up enormously? He will be still more foolish and ignorant. This false I must perish. Its annihilation is the fruit of guru service.